What's up, guys? Gonna go through a couple things here. We're gonna start off today looking at SPY ETF here. So this is definitely a surprise, or not a surprise, excuse me, with the Iran news coming up this past weekend, talking about a deal being reached. There's going to be lots of positive sentiment in the market today. Definitely a huge gap up on a lot of stocks that we're going to see here shortly. SPY being one of them, QQQ, several others. We'll see if it holds this gap up or if it pulls back down. We are close to all-time highs, so I get close to that discovery range. So we're going to see what it does today. If it holds above, this may be a gap that it later comes back to fill. So we shall see. But definitely marking this on my longer term swings, keeping an eye on this, seeing if it holds this uptrend. If you see if it holds this gap up, excuse me. But definitely pretty happy with that. I'm not planning on doing any scalps today. Same thing here with QQQ on the NASDAQ ETF. Major gap up. A lot of sentiment on the overall market in general between the SpaceX IPO releasing, the Trump saying we've won the war again. We'll see if it holds true this time. But that's a pretty healthy gap up. So if we keep in the green and keep above this gap up zone today, I definitely see some more upside coming later this week. If we don't, or if we come back and retrace, might see a little bit more of a pullback and kind of consolidating some prices here. So probably some liquidity still to be sucked out of these ranges before we break back into all-time highs, just to make sure everybody's happy with where the market is. Quick look at Bitcoin. Nothing that I've really been touching recently. I've kind of stayed out of it, but we are kind of getting to that zone, that 60 range. We need to stay above. That was a previous high, or previous low, may I say. Kind of need to stay above that, and it appeared to bounce pretty well off of it, but it's going to have to keep that. So if it tests it again, it's going to have to keep that zone. If it does not, we're going to be definitely seeing more downside. Caterpillar, winner over the past year especially, been doing really well. We kind of kept in discovery, kept going through all-time highs, and then retested that all-time high again last week. But it's kind of figuring itself out right now. We're kind of sitting through some chop, but it did, like the rest of the market, it gapped up pretty well. But it's going to have to hold this gap up. Not saying specifically it has to hold the gap itself, but it needs to keep showing signs of strength and upside to keep this movement going, because I'm sure the sellers would love for a really good pullback after the year it's had. So we shall see how it progresses. So next up on the docket, might as well look at SpaceX. Like I said, I've kind of just been eyeballing this one. Not a whole lot has happened. Waiting to see, how this thing's going to develop, how it's going to show up. I've kind of seen some zones starting to develop on the 15-minute. So that's, decent indicator. There's not a whole lot to go off of. I personally think that this, evaluation is still way over evaluated of the value of this company. But a lot of people feel that way about all of the tech sector. So I guess it's your personal preference of what you're willing to risk, on these companies. But, there's always that fear of missing out, and it may continue to shoot up. So we'll see. I'm just definitely longer term seeing what's happening there. Now to NVIDIA, another banger here. It's been a killer in the market for quite some time. So gap up as well on NVIDIA. We'll see if that holds. We're kind of sitting through some chop right now. So that's a lot of areas that's going to have to break through either upside or downside. That gap up did kind of reject pretty hard off of that green line there, which is going to be, that was a previous resistance zone. So if it does not able to hold or break through that, we're definitely going to pull back today and or in the next day or so and fill that gap that it made overnight. So another one off branch of the SpaceX here is Tesla. Definitely a decent swing stock. I kind of swing trade on this one occasionally. It has pretty good movement, but pretty good gap up today. So same story as always. I'm checking to see if this gap on the pre-market is going to hold. If it does not, then we definitely have downside coming. We're coming to fill that gap. Easy short right there. Get in and get out. So we shall see. If it stays mounted above this 407.53, which is the overnight zone, if it mounts above that, we're definitely going to come up and scalp that 418 zone and get in and out with that. So we'll see how it does today. Intel, as always, uptrend forever and ever. No, but we've been sitting in a range here, and that gap up seems to have broke out of that range. So we shall see if this is actual signs of continued all-time highs at Discovery, or if this was just part of reacting to the Iran news. Hard to say when a company is sitting this high in the market, but there's a lot of sentiment behind it, so we'll see if it holds. Definitely keeping an eye on that one though. That's a longer term hold for me, since it's such an important part of the whole AI movement and tech in general. But all that looks pretty good to me. Has a pretty good bounce off of that range right there. So if it can keep that up, we'll definitely have more upside coming, most likely. But let's look at some other stuff here. Robinhood, that's kind of been somewhat of a longer term hold for me personally. It did gap up as well, just like everything else, similar to Intel. It kind of broke out of a range with this gap up, so have some pretty easy indicators to see, what's going to happen if it doesn't hold above the range. If it, breaks back below it, we're probably going to keep chopping through that range, and you could always look out for a, break above the range and then a retest as well. But we've been kind of sitting in this range for a while, so I'm not surprised if it breaks out and wants to go somewhere else. But keeping an eye on that one, have alerts set for that. We might have some gap up, fill some 99 to 100 range, get in there and make a little money off of that. But we'll see if it holds today. A lot of we'll see today as a gap up, so that's always a point of interest to see what it does, what it holds on to, and the strength that it has there for all these stocks. The next couple things I'm going to just kind of breeze through. U.S. oil, U.S. U.S. 10-year, or well, I guess 5-year, 10-year, and 30-year yields. Those are definitely good indicators. The U.S. oil has come down, massive gap up, or gap down, especially after hearing the Strait of Hormuz, possibly opening this Friday if this deal goes through. So that is a good sign for fuel prices. We'll see if it holds, because this has happened before. We thought we've won it, we've came to an agreement, and then next thing you know, we're back into fighting with Iran and disagreeing. So we're going to see if it holds. Same with the 10-year yield and the 30-year yield, which I'm going to show you in a second. But those are definitely coming down since earlier this month, which is a good sign. I think that means, people are going to start rolling back into, the returns aren't going to be as good on their yields, their bonds, so some money is going to start rolling back into higher return stocks, whether that be the tech sector or whatever it may be. But I think, these companies can acquire debt for more research and development at a cheaper rate, when these 30-year yields come down. So that's also signs of increasing companies. So we'll see if this stays true over the next little bit. But I am definitely not seeing any major downside with all this news affecting the market. So I think we still have upside to reach. This SpaceX thing is definitely going to be a big effect in the market, and oil coming down, and with prices and that's going to definitely affect the economy and spending, and how people feel about the economy, and how the overall rally of the market and everything else is going to be handled. But yeah, we're sitting at some ranges here. Might have some chop that we're working our way through, but I'm waiting on that 4.913. If we happen to break below that, definitely have more downside.